What's up, guys? I've been talking lately with a lot of high school football coaches in Alabama, several high school football players about the upcoming 2022 season. And as of this podcast, as of this recording, it's only June the 9th. So summer workouts are underway for these guys, but trying to get a little bit ahead and talk to some of these guys and just get their thoughts on 2022. I talked to this week. Oh my gosh, I've probably talked to a dozen guys, and I know during the summer we all crave football. We get in that dead period a little bit, where baseball is just about the only thing that we've got, and I love baseball, but I know it gets to that point where you start really wanting some, to see some games on Friday, on Saturday, on Sunday. And so I just wanted to kind of go through just a little bit some of the guys I've talked to, a little bit about the stuff that we talked about. I'm sure you'll read a lot of it later, probably in a couple months, but just wanted to hit some highlights. I taught, and I'll go through some schedule stuff as well. So kind of if this podcast has a working agenda, a little bit about Christopher Vizzina, the now 5-star quarterback at Briarwood Christian School, Class 6A. Talked to him. I know he's a 5-star guy. He's getting hounded by 24/7 sports, On3 Sports, ESPN, all of them. And me and him had a really good, 35-45 minute conversation, and we didn't talk about schedule. We didn't talk about mechanics or opening the season at Clay Chalkville or anything like that. So that'll be a fun story to look at. We talked a lot about legacy. We talked a lot about experience. I for that story, I talked to Christopher, talked to his coach, Matthew Forrester, and I didn't talk to another player. I didn't talk to another coach. So I'll leave it at that. It's a little bit more of a human interest about Christopher in a way. Everybody is very well aware of what he does on the field, and obviously the on the field stuff will be part of that story. It is a football story, but it's more about the guy. And it's crazy. Like I've covered him since, I guess since he was a freshman. Started hearing about him when he was in 8th grade. It reminds me a little bit of how we covered Evan Smith at Oak Mountain, the QB there. Basically started since a freshman. And he's one of those guys, especially you see it at the college level where you see these guys that, whether it be football, I experience it more watching college basketball, but where, your favorite team is playing another team from the SEC or something. And you're like, my gosh, when is that guy going to graduate? It seems like he's been there for like 8 years. And that's how I felt about Evan up until this past year. He's off to Northwestern, I believe, to try his hand at defensive back. And that's kind of how I feel about Christopher. He's a 5-star guy going to Clemson. Starts. I can't remember for sure. Christopher would have to speak to it, but I think first offer might have been UAB in 8th grade. So obviously the recruiting whirlwind for him really picked up this last year or so, during and after his junior season, going into what's now about to be his final year. Visits everywhere. I know he's gone to, obviously he's gone to Clemson probably several times now that he's committed. He's been out to Notre Dame, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Louisville, Kentucky, just world traveler. Yeah, we talked maybe a day or two after he got back from a quarterback camp out in Los Angeles. So he was out in LA, he gets back, we found a time to chat. And then I think like the next day he was off to a visit at Clemson. So he has been he has been circling these United States over the last year or two, and it's really cool to see. Just a really humble guy who's really looking forward to this last season, this last semester at Briarwood Christian. So that's going to be fun to watch him. I've gotten to see Briarwood probably out of all the schools that I freelance cover for Starnes Media, which includes the Village Living newspaper that covers Mountain Brook, Vestavia Voice that covers Vestavia Hills, Homewood Star for Homewood, 280 Living for Briarwood, Chelsea, Hoover Sun for Hoover Spain Park, Cahaba Sun for Hewitt Trustful, Clay Chalkville, Pinson Valley. All of the, if I left anybody out, I'm sorry. It's hard to think of these off the top of my head. But out of all these schools, I've probably covered Briarwood games maybe the most. Oak Mountain might be close in that. But I've been at Briarwood more than any other probably over the last 4 or 5 years. So I've gotten to know a lot of those people over there. I love that place. It's an amazing place, and it's, just looking at it from the standpoint of just who's surrounding, whether it be Christopher Vizzina or anyone else on a team, whether it be football, volleyball, choir, whatever it might be, you can tell why a kid over there is humble and gracious and just an all around, good person because of the people that are there. So I guess that's a free shout out to Briarwood Christian School, but I love Briarwood Christian. All right, so more on Vizzina later. You'll read about that later, and you'll obviously read about him all fall and Briarwood Christian. So I am going to talk now a little bit about Class 7A Region 3. So Region 3, there are 8 schools, and if you're watching this, I am sharing my screen to, just kind of have some visuals here. But Class 7A Region 3 is, it's the SEC West. But, everybody says that, so maybe it's becoming cliche, but it's hard to be a cliche if it's true. So 7A Region 3 is just a crazy region. It's known obviously statewide, but it's a national region. You've got Chelsea is now in Region 3. They've been in 6A the last little bit. So their enrollment has gotten up enough to where they're one of the smallest 7A schools, but they've met that criteria to be one of the 32 teams across the state in region or in Class 7A. So Chelsea joins that region. Hewitt Trustful, they've been in that region since 7A came about in 2014. You've still got your other, your usual suspects. You've got Hoover, Oak Mountain, Spain Park, 3-time defending champion Thompson, Tuscaloosa County, and Vestavia Hills. It's a murderer's row. It's often in the last few years kind of been a battle for that 4th playoff spot. Thompson and Hoover have pretty much, one of them wins the region. Thompson's kind of had that number for a little while. And then Hewitt Trustful has seemingly been kind of that 3rd seed out of the region that travels north for the first round of the playoffs. And then that 4th seed is one that, seemingly comes down to a game or two, like your Oak Mountains, Vestavias, your Spain Parks. And, it's just a tough region. You get 10 regular season games and 7 of them are those opponents. And then, a lot of these teams schedule their non-region games. It might be a rivalry game that they're accustomed to playing. They might go out of state and play a team from Georgia or Florida or Tennessee, Mississippi, one of the bordering states. So what I wanted to do was, Region 3 for a while has been, it's only been in existence and 7A came about in 2014. But, some of these schools have had guys lead those programs for a little while. And, back at the end of this past year, Josh Niblett leaves Hoover to take the job at Gainesville, Georgia, which is just, we're starting to see that maybe a little bit more where guys have, the number of years that they need to be retired in the Alabama public education system, to be fully vested and they can retire. And then they're young enough that, you get a job over in a Georgia, where there's some really good high school football over there and some really good pay over there. And it's brilliant. I mean, you're I don't want to use the term double dipping, but you've put in the work, you're able to retire here, you're pulling that retirement, and then you can go to another state and work another job in a new state. And so Coach Niblett, a little bit of a surprise leaving Hoover, but he moves on to Georgia. Sean Calhoun, after 1 year, left Vestavia Hills. So we had Dustin Goodwin left Chelsea to be an assistant at Thompson. And then Sean Rainey was no longer the head coach at Spain Park. They made a change there. So 8 region teams, and 4 of them, so half the region this year has new coaches, first year at those schools coaches. And I talked to all 4 of those guys, the new guys, and I'm about to talk a little bit about them. But so I talked to all 4 of those new guys, and then so let's just go down the list. So Hewitt-Trussville, Josh Floyd is the head coach. I think this is his 9th year at Hewitt-Trussville. He is now the most tenured coach in that region, just in terms of at that particular school. So he's going into his 9th year. He came from Arkansas back in 2014. And I was texting with him the other day about some of this because I was talking to Hoover's new coach, Wade Waldrop. And Wade said that Josh is the dean now. He's the godfather. So we laughed about that. And then 1 year behind Coach Floyd in terms of tenure is Mark Freeman at Thompson, going into his 8th year. And then after those 2 guys, you've got Adam Weingarten at Tuscaloosa County. He's been a big time coach for a while. Coached, I believe it was at Auburn High School. He's going into his 2nd year at Tuscaloosa County, trying to turn that program around, build it up. Tyler Crane also going into his 2nd year at Oak Mountain High School. And then everybody else is new. Todd Cassidy is the new head coach at Chelsea. Robert Evans, new coach at Vestavia Hills. Tim Vacakis, the new head coach at Spain Park. And the aforementioned Wade Waldrop is the new coach at Hoover. So let's go through just a little bit about these guys. So we'll start with Tim Vacakis. So if you're watching this, you can see me sharing my screen. And that's Tim there, Spain Park. He spent the last 9 years or so at Jackson Olin, built a heck of a program there. And, just a playoff contender. They had a lot of D1 athletes, go on to some big time schools out of that Birmingham area. And talking to him was awesome. I've talked to Tim in the past, maybe at, a media days or 2, and just a super intense guy, but super serious about doing things the right way. And really, he was talking about how to build this Spain Park program into what he wants it to be. He talked a lot about community and just how great that area of Hoover, that Spain Park community is, and wanting to make them proud. And a lot about the weight room. He said, you can read it right here. Spain Park High School's new football coach is emphasizing a culture of discipline and toughness. and I don't remember the numbers, but he was talking about particular weight lift exercise that these guys do. And when they first came in, they had a certain number of guys that were able to do that weight. And then after X amount of time, spring and summer, I mean, it had quadrupled the number of guys. So the dudes there they're building muscle, they're building that strength, and it really seems like that's a program that Tim wants to build from the trenches out. Be physical, play smart, play tough, and really looking forward to. He's awesome. Like, selfishly, he's awesome with the media. Tim says a lot of really good things. And he's easy to talk to. He's fun to talk to. So really looking forward to watching what he does at Spain Park. So next, who should we talk about next? Let's talk about Robert Evans at Vestavia Hills. Robert has been, Robert's been at a lot of big programs. I think he was at Oak Mountain maybe for 1 year. Was at Hoover as a D coordinator for 8 years. And he spent the last 4 years at Mountain Brook High School. And if you know anything about Mountain Brook the last couple of years, that defense was just absolutely nasty. I don't remember how many shutouts they had last year, but it was, oh my gosh, I feel like it was at least 5 or 6 out of a 10-game regular season. I mean, we're not talking about just wins or just one touchdown or just a field goal. We're talking about shutouts. He's a fiery guy. I'd never talked to Robert before, but in talking with him, it was like, I don't know, I almost had to check myself. Like, it seemed like the conversation just flowed, which was great. Again, selfishly, as someone in the media talking to a coach or to a player, you love it when a guy is incredibly honest with you and says a lot of good things, and really feels incredibly confident in their plan and what they're going to do, and bringing that program back. Because looking at Vestavia Hills, this will move. I think in the last maybe 6-7 years, they've only made the playoffs, I think, one time. And that's something that Robert talked about. Is he doesn't talk about, well, if we make the playoffs or if we do this. He really talks about when. Now, he's obviously not promising a timeline. He's like, I can't promise we're going to make the playoffs this year or next year or the year after that, but he's like, I can promise you we're going to be competitive, we're going to compete, we're going to get after it, and we're not going to relent to anyone. And I mean, he sounded just incredibly confident that they're a team that's going to attack. It would be really easy for a lot of guys, a lot of players in a region like this. You're playing a Thompson who, maybe they're bigger, faster, stronger. They've won 3 state championships in a row. They're one of the best high school programs right now in America, not just Alabama, but America. And you're talking about, well, we're going to go attack them. I mean, it's like, let's say you lose the game. Would you rather? I mean, you'd rather win, obviously, but if you lose, don't you want to look back and be like, I attacked. I didn't just give in because that defensive lineman is, 6'5", 300 pounds. I tried, I attacked, I did the best I could. I mean, that's, I could get on a soapbox about high school sports right now and some of the things that are important to some people, but that's to me what high school sports, what high school is all about. So he was just awesome to talk to. I could have stayed on the phone with him all day. I think he knows that. But he's got a tough road to hoe there at Vestavia Hills. I mean, just like anybody in this region. I'm looking at his schedule, at Vestavia's schedule right now for 2022. They open up August 18th at home. Might have a new video board out there at Thompson Reynolds Stadium, Buddy Anderson Field, and they open up against Mountain Brook, which I mean, it's a Thursday night opener, so all eyes are going to be on Vestavia Hills that night, and with most of the teams opening up the next night, August 19th, that Friday. Probably going to have a new video board. That stadium, regardless of the type of season Vestavia is having, I will say that about Vestavia. They can be a 9-1 team, they can be a 1-9 team. Their support has always been really strong, at least in my experience. I've been there for some tough seasons, for some tough games, and the support's there. The students are down in that corner, and they are loud. They're hilarious, and they are loud. The fans stay there, so that night is going to be electric, and that's just week one. After week one, I mean, it's or week zero, whatever we're calling it now. It's weird to me, but you open up at home against Mountain Brook. The following week, you stay at home, but you've got Homewood. That's a tough out. It's kind of a rivalry game. Both those non-region games, and then listen to this when you jump into region. September for Vestavia Hills is just wow. So on September 2nd, they host Thompson. The next week they go to Hoover. Week after that, they go to Spain Park. On September 23rd, they get what's going to be a much needed bye week, and then they stay in region play and host Chelsea. And then back-to-back weeks, they go to Hewitt-Trussville, to Oak Mountain, wrap up region play October 21st at home against Tuscaloosa County, and then close out the season non-region game at Helena. That's crazy. Like, I will be very interested at the end of this upcoming season what Vestavia Hills' their opponent's final record is after the regular season. It's going to be incredible. I mean, you've got 7A Region 3, which will beat up on itself a little bit, but your non-region games are Mountain Brook, Homewood, and Helena. I mean, that's crazy. Like, that's got to be one of the tougher schedules around. So really looking forward to what Coach Evans does at Vestavia Hills. That is his alma mater. Scroll down a little bit. So, he played baseball and football at Vestavia. I think he was part of a state championship team at Vestavia. A lot of this is off the top of my head, but just a very fiery, attack the day kind of guy, and just again another guy that coming into this region as a head coach now, just injecting a lot of new blood, but a lot of new juice into 7A Region 3. I mean, as if it needed any more, but man, it's going to be fun this fall in that region. So let's talk a little bit more about the region. Todd Cassidy, he is the new head coach at Chelsea. So he gets to take over when Chelsea ascends to Class 7A. And I talked to Todd this past week as well, and I didn't know Todd before we talked. We talked about that. We went through kind of where he's coached, and where I may have run into him in the past, or been on the same sideline one night and just didn't know it. Like I was aware of Tim, who's now at Spain Park, Vacakis. I was aware of Coach Evans at Vestavia Hills just because I've covered enough Hoover and Mountain Brook games that I knew who Coach Evans was, but didn't know Todd. So this story from a few weeks ago that, let me scroll back up, that Kyle Parmley wrote, the sports editor at Starnes Media. This is something that me and Todd talked about too. He said that Todd's wife works in the Shelby County school system. He's had several friends coach at Chelsea throughout the years, including Coach Goodwin, who left after the last 4 years at Chelsea to go to Thompson as an assistant. And we talked about just his coaching experience, his coaching tree. The last 7 years he's been at JB Pennington. He really turned that program around. Before he got there, JB Pennington had won 9 games in the previous 5 seasons. They went 2-8 his first year, but then he led them to the playoffs 6 straight years. They had a couple of years where they won 8 games, one year where they won 9 out of 10 games. So he's a program changer. He coached at Demopolis. They won a state championship as an assistant. He was the head coach at Gordo. And then in 2007, this is where I think maybe at some point I came across him, but he was the offensive coordinator for 8 years at Pleasant Grove. So I've seen Pleasant Grove a few times play probably Briarwood Christian. So he knows that he's got his work cut out for him in that region. I mean, that region is, I mean, I've already been talking about what that region is, but I'm looking now at some of the things that we talked about, and let's see. Yeah, Chelsea's been in Class 6A since 2012, and this is a quote from Cassidy. He said, "We're going to go against teams who have more players, probably a lot more to pull from, but you can still only put 11 out there. Just approach it in that way, something that's good. It's positive. Now we get to play with the big boys. We get to see how good we actually are and take it that way." That's yeah, I mean, he's exactly right. It's, that's what 7A and any classification is about, any program's about numbers. I talked to Jack Wood one time earlier this year. He was the head coach at Hewitt Trustful for, oh gosh, how long was Jack there? I don't know, 1983 to 01, maybe something like that. And he said any program is numbers. I mean, you've obviously got to coach them up. It's not like you can just have a whole bunch of kids and that means you win a state championship. But it's just simple math that the more players you have, that equals more depth. That equals more chances at having standout players, that kind of thing. So Chelsea's one of the smallest, if not the smallest. I don't remember from when reclassification happened, but they're, if not the smallest, they're one of the smallest enrollments in Class 7A. And we'll see what that means for them the next 2 years. I'm sure that's going to be some growing pains probably for the next 2 years, but I'm sure they'll attack just like Coach Evans talked about at Vestavia. So that will be really cool to see them get to play some new opponents. I asked Coach Cassidy if he had ever faced a Class 7A team as a coach, and I figured not. So this isn't surprising. Being at a Gordo, at a Pleasant Grove, Demopolis, JB Pennington. And he said, no, we're all going in this together. And I mean, that's obviously a great attitude to have, and really looking forward to what he can do out there down 280. So let's talk lastly about from Class 7A about Wade Waldrop at Hoover. So Wade, he was approved back in, I think it was January of this year. My gosh, I know Kyle, who wrote this story about Wade's hire in January. I'm sure his phone was blowing up, even mine. And I'm just freelance now. I guess because I cover high school football so much, people just assume I cover it a lot, but really it's just some of these preview type stories, and then obviously on Fridays in the fall. But back when Coach Niblett decided to hang it up in Alabama and move to Georgia, I had some coaches around the state that I know that were even texting me saying hey, have you heard, who might get the Hoover job? And I'm like, well, wouldn't y'all know that better than me? So obviously there was a lot of interest surrounding that job. Maybe not one most people expected to come open. I mean, Coach Waldrop said that to me when we chatted. He said, he had been at James Clemens for a number of years, and then this past year, moved not far away from James Clemens, but moved to take the job at Florence and for just this last 2021 season. And he said, I just had such a good feeling up there that, I thought that might be it for me, that, I'm just going to stay up here and this is where I'm going to finish out my career. And, he just loved it. He was not looking to move, not looking to take another job. And who could blame him if you're up in that area of North Alabama, Florence, James Clemens, just a great area. And, but Hoover's different. It's been a bit since they've won one. Thompson does kind of reign supreme right now, but Hoover's Hoover. Like what other high school program has had its own show on MTV back when people watched MTV? So Coach Waldrop, he's been a head coach in Alabama since 2006. They went 5-6 at Florence last year, made the playoffs. And when he made stops at Chelsea, James Clemens, and Florence. Overall record, he's got 100 wins. 7 years as a head coach at Chelsea, he was 41-34. And then 54-35 in 8 seasons at James Clemens. We talked about that because he's very familiar with Region 3. Not just because of Hoover, but that's how that matches up in the playoffs. Is the region that James Clemens was in matches up to Region 3. So a lot of times James Clemens wins that region or finishes second in that region. They're hosting at home, and oftentimes Hewitt-Trussville was the draw. And he talked about that he was familiar with Josh and Floyd at Hewitt-Trussville and the Huskies program because they faced off a little bit. So it'll be really cool. I'm trying to get back to here. I'm toggling through all of my all right, there we go. Through all my screen shares and stats and schedules. So let's take a look at some of these schedules in 7A Region 3, and then we'll move on and talk a little bit about Mountain Brook. So we've talked about Vestavia Hills schedule. Let's go next. Gracious, add pop-ups. All right, let's talk about Spain Park 2022 schedule. August 19th is the opener at home against Calera. And then again, September is doing a number on these schools. So August 26th, Spain Park travels to Briarwood Christian. Next week, they travel to Hoover. The next week, they travel to Thompson. And then September 16th, they're back at home to host Vestavia Hills. That's the first half of Spain Park's schedule. Host Calera, travel to Briarwood, Hoover, and Thompson, host Vestavia Hills before they get a bye week, September 23rd. Just murderer's row. My gracious. Back half of the schedule, they stay in region to host Tuscaloosa County, travel to Chelsea, and then host Hewitt-Trussville and Oak Mountain. Those last few region games, like if you just look at, trying to predict maybe who's going to potentially finish where, stack up, those last 4 region games are big. That's an obvious statement, but those will loom large in October. And then close out the season traveling to Pelham before playoffs get underway in early November. All right, let's check out Chelsea. So first year in Class 7A. So they're going to open up 2 straight non-region games. They're going to open up against Helena at home and then travel to Calera. And then they kick off region play at home against Tuscaloosa County. Then they travel to Oak Mountain, host Thompson. And then September 23rd, they're not taking the mid-season bye week. They will host Pelham in a non-region game. And then they finish out the year 4 straight region games at Vestavia Hills, at home against Spain Park, travel to Hoover, and travel to Hewitt-Trussville. That, again, broken record, is a tough schedule. And then they took the last week, they took their bye. So their regular season actually wraps up October 21st. So should Chelsea make the playoffs, they'll get a nice little 2-week break. All right. Last Region 3 schedule. We're just focusing on those four schools: Spain Park, Vestavia, Chelsea, and Hoover, just because they have the new coaches, and that's just kind of what I just talked about. So Hoover, interesting schedule. They opened 2022 against Auburn. Looks like I don't know where. Okay, the Auburn game, I don't know. Maybe that's a kickoff classic. I don't know. Someone will let me know that. The schedule I'm looking at, it's hard to tell. And then they play Bartlett, Tennessee for their second game. And then they begin region play at home against Spain Park, at home against Vestavia Hills. So they get those two kind of crosstown rivalry games, both at home, back-to-back weeks. So we'll see what Hoover, we'll get quite the barometer on them those first 2 weeks, Auburn and Bartlett, Tennessee, but then hosting Spain Park, hosting Vestavia Hills. Then they'll play 3 straight road games at Hewitt-Trussville, at Mountain Brook, that's a non-region game, and then at Oak Mountain. And then finish up the season at home against Tuscaloosa County, and then travel to Chelsea and travel to Thompson October 21st. That's become such a thing with these schedules, is Hoover and Thompson playing right there at the end of the year. And I don't know. I mean, I it is what it is. Like I don't know. Maybe y'all tell me, what would you rather see? Would you rather see games like that seem like they're going to be, the big game like that, week 2, week 3, or do you like saving it for the end? I covered Hewitt-Trussville, Clay Chalkville for a long time before that series ended back at the end of last time they played was 2015. But, people had various opinions, and, to me, the people I've talked to, there was never like I favor, like, the dominant population favored it one way or the other. I mean, they've played week 1, they've played week 2, they've played week 5, and they've obviously played week 10, just like Hoover and Thompson are here to wrap up the season. So I don't know. I'd be curious, like, are both teams going to be tired and kind of limp in? God forbid, injury, key injuries that could dictate the outcome. I guess my opinion, maybe I'd like to maybe see it earlier in the season, but scheduling is a game of Tetris. It's a puzzle. So it's cool that they play and that they both have played at such a high level for so long. So that will obviously be the game of the week across the state. And then Hoover is on a bye week for October 28th. So those are those schedules. That's a little bit about Region 3. Actually, it's a lot about Region 3. I kind of rambled, but maybe you were craving some high school football content and we'll enjoy it. So the last thing, and then I'm going to wrap this thing. I talked to several folks from Mountain Brook High School this past week, and I talked to a soon-to-be senior wide receiver. Just awesome dude. Maybe a little bit undersized, but he doesn't know it. His name's Jackson Beatty, and he's he had, I think, 12 touchdowns last year receiving, punt return, kick returner. Coach, I talked to Coach Chris Yeager at Mountain Brook, and he said, yeah, those stats, and obviously that production is something you need, and it's great. But he said he's probably one of the best perimeter blockers we've ever had, at receiver, and that was where that undersized comment came from. He might be a touch undersized, but he's so hungry and just wants to play the game the best way he can, that sometimes it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. So I talked to him. I talked to linebacker Trent Wright, also an upcoming senior. He had, more than 100 tackles last year. I think he was I think Kyle had him as a second team All Metro guy. He's going to be a guy that leads that defense this year. I mean, it's going to be led by several guys, but he's one who likely stands out. Mountain Brook's returning, I think, 8 starters on offense, 6 on defense. They're one of the biggest, deepest 6A schools. They've been in 7A, and at the last previous reclassification, they dipped back down to 6A. So that will be they'll be a fun team to watch. I love covering Mountain Brook, especially last year. I mean, they play, they kind of ground and pound a little bit, throw when they need to, and that defense under Robert Evans, who's now at Vestavia Hills, that defense is just nasty, salty. They attack, and it's just there was just like no real like gaps in that defense. Like you can be an elite defense and still have a bust every now and then, or heck, give up a 45-yard field goal. They were shutting out more than half their schedule last year. So 6 returners, starters on defense, 8 on offense. That's going to be a really good football team. And they'll probably be looking to avenge some playoff loss stuff. I can't remember. Maybe they lost. I think they got eliminated by Clay Chalk Bowl. And Clay Chalk Bowl last year, we said it preseason that team was going to go 15-0, and then that team went 15-0. That was a team on a mission. They were too good across the board. From offensive, defensive line to the back 7 to obviously the quarterback. Caleb Johnson's going to Louisville. Skill guys. Clay always has just incredible skill guys, and they were kind of young at the skill positions last year, but you knew there was like raw talent there, guys that were already being recruited, offers as sophomores. But a lot of times, young guys like that, they're still going to make mistakes, and they just really didn't. They just clicked on all cylinders, seemingly from week 0 all the way till Protective Stadium, winning the state championship over Hueytown. Amazing team. So we'll see if the Spartans and Clay Chalk will collide again this year. So I've gone on for like 45 minutes now, but I love high school football. I love the personalities. I obviously love the games, the culture. It's just fun to talk about. And, right now it's just a lot of pontificating. It's a lot of, who's going to be good, who returns who, what players might be moving to another school, all of that fun stuff that we talk about in the summertime. But pretty soon, 2 months away, it'll be time to kick this thing off and, see how this season goes. I think it's going to be, this will be, I counted back, I think this will be my 15th season covering high school football. And so, I've covered probably 150 games, and I don't know that I've ever been as eager for a football season as I am this one. I covered some in Mississippi, covered some seasons in Tuscaloosa, and then a lot over here in the Northeast Jefferson County area. A lot of Hewitt-Trussville, a lot of Clay Chalk Bowl, a lot of Pinson Valley. So, from week to week, spread out all across the Birmingham area, the way I get to cover things for Starnes Media. 1 week I'll cover Briarwood, the next week it'll be Hewitt-Trussville, the next week it'll be Oak Mountain. So I'm a little bit of everywhere. And I kind of love that setup, especially this year, where it seems like every school has some sort of cool theme or some cool background stories going into this year. A lot of new faces, obviously, across Region 3. a lot of good storylines, and just a lot of good kids. Everybody that I've talked to so far, and that I know is coming back, just obviously respectful, but talks in such a positive way about their teams, their teammates, and they say the right things and they have fun with it too. So I think it's going to be one of the best high school football seasons that I've personally ever seen, and I can't wait to get going. So hopefully I'll see y'all on a sideline this fall. As always, I'll be the one in the Atlanta Braves hat. We'll see y'all next time.